I'm Richard Veltre, scribe to Mind Over Madness.
It hindered me, and I thought it was making it better, but it was...
I'm originally from Rochester, New York, but I moved around. And he helped me get a car, so I thanking a man that helped me to get through a nice guy. I mean, it really was a good man to me. I would have never picked him out of the thing and said that's a powerful man. He's writing to Angelo. He must have been talking about Russ with a letter to Russ by writing it to Angelo. And to get this pin and to look back at where I am now and to get this pin, it's an honor. I'm truly, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate this very much. You know, when you told me that I was doing this, when I saw the podcast of what was going on, I knew you guys were the real guys. I read the letter, and apparently there was an issue, and in the letter, he never mentioned any name. He just said our friend, which obviously he meant, since he's writing to Angelo, he must have been talking about Russ. Angelo and Russ, and then the letter from Frank is made out to Angelo. I call him Frank like I know him.
Now, Russell Bufalino, though, was very good. You know, everyone says he's like the quiet Don.
Yeah.
He was also very good at even hiding his people.
Looking back at some of the guys, the way they moved, this guy was a smart guy. I mean, he cloaking his people that work for him as well as himself. So a lot of guys, especially today, they like to talk loud, wear suits, pinky rings, act, bring heat to themselves. This man learned from the old country how to be a man.
Yeah.
Angelo must have had his shit together to be handling all this stuff for us, because, if anything ever went wrong, it would bounce back to Angelo. So yeah, they covered their bases. And when you told me the story, how he had Frankie Avalon and a lot of these stars come into Piston to raise money for the Children's Hospital. I mean, who does that? You know what I mean? Who gives a shit enough?
Being in there, though, how you said, because I haven't heard a bad word about him, and that's rare in that life. But my plan, he lived to be 90, and he died in 94. So to live that long and at home, but then he had to go over to Nesbitt Hospital. My question, though, to you is, I didn't mean, not command bully wise, though, but were you able to tell he was powerful?
Well, besides learning the story gradually as it came out, I would have never picked him out of the thing and said that's a powerful man. He was very humble, and he never raised his voice. He was a nice guy. I mean, it really was a good man to me, and I watched the way he moved around, and he was not a bully. He didn't push nobody. He was a nice man, and he helped me. There was no halfway house in Rochester, and he asked me where I was going, and I told him I was going to Syracuse, and then he told me, when I get to Syracuse, look up this gentleman, and I did, and he helped me get a car so I could drive home to Rochester on the weekends, because I was staying at the Salvation Army in Syracuse. That was the halfway house at the time. We didn't have any in Rochester. So if it wasn't for him helping me, I wouldn't have been able to go back and forth on the weekends to visit my family. And a funny story is that I wrote him a letter, a simple guy just writing a letter thanking a man that helped me to get through a challenging spot, to be in a halfway house away from my town by myself, to have that car to go home. It was great. So I wrote him a letter thanking him for everything he did for me. And one day I was at Syracuse Mall, and I was walking out of the mall, and these two big guys grabbed me, handcuffed me, and put me in the back of the car. It took off. Now from Syracuse, they were taking me to Montgomery County Jail, which I think was like an hour and a half to 2 hour drive north, and they didn't say anything to me. And I said, I remember I asked them, "You guys got ID?" I also want to say that, you know, I tried really hard. I had some very dear friends that guided me on this path of success that I'm on. Very dear friend, and I took his advice. And if it wasn't for my friend, you know, to look back at 72, looking back at this, in the frame of mind that I have now, after being successful in my life with not only money, but my wife and my family and the good friends that I have around me. And to get this pin and to look back at where I am now and to get this pin, it's an honor. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate this very much. And Tom Joel, appreciate this. I really do.
Yeah.
And I hold this in high esteem, and I thank you. That's where I met Russ in Danbury. That finally, I'm living in Southernville. That now, back then, you got the American flag with the federal judge, and next to the American flag was the rebel flag. Mm-hmm. I mean, they hung it in the thing. So he said, my father was a lawyer, and he goes, "You're in federal guidelines. They can't give you any more than 100 months. So I says to him, "All right, that's fine." I go to trial. I get done. I lose. And I go like this: "You got anything to say before I sentence you?" I says, "Yeah." "Fuck you, fuck that flag, and fuck this motherfucker," pointing to the district
attorney. That
attorney.
didn't help your case out much.
No, I was over.
No,
it was done.
no.
He was going to sentence me, and he couldn't take me outside my guidelines.
But you
So,
know,
but when the marshals carried me out of to bring me back,
Keith, what were you saying though, Keith? What were you saying?
So he was about to give you your sentence?
He was going to give me my sentence.
You know, he might have been giving you 8 years, but then you told him to go fuck himself. So
he had federal guidelines. He had to stay within the guidelines.
Yeah, but he could go lower than the guidelines.
Well, I could have.
On the low end. But if you tell the judge,
no, I was gonna. My lawyer had the guidelines all calculated. We were right on.
Okay. I just don't think it was very smart.
I didn't care. But they all talk. They all talk like this. And in the chow hall, "What are you, one of them Yankees, boy?" You know, I was fucking 2.5 years of that shit. I hated it. So, you know, finally I'm getting out of here, right? And they made a recommendation to the Bureau of Prisons that they tried to get me as close to my home as I could. So it took me 10 months to get there, and then picked me up the next day. You know, it took a long time. It took 10 months to get to that prison. I was so glad because everybody had like Boston accents being in Connecticut. I go, "Oh God, I'll take a Connecticut accent over a Southern accent any day." I was so glad.
Federal prison?
Yeah, it was federal.
Story about what made you ask
all the time.
What made you ask him though, like about Russell?
Because I knew he was a guy. I knew he was a guy. I could tell. You know, he was. You know. We're going to talk to Joey Buffalino in New York City. I'm going to go talk to this. He'd be flying to Las Vegas to go to Caesars. He gave me a pair of boxing gloves signed by Rocky Marciano. He would get tickets to plays or to Frank Sinatra when he would come to close to my mother, wanted to go see him. You know, I could see he knew what he was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So he knew Russ.
He's a Sicilian, so he should know these people. So that's what I told him. I said, "Meet your Gramps. There's some old guy here. You know, the cops are open. The federal guards are opening up. Hello, Mr. Bufalino. They're opening up the door for the guy before he walks to the door. I mean, fuck. Pretty cool, you know. To me, they didn't open it for me. I stood there like this. They said, "Look at me. What do you want, kid? Get inside."
talking to my grandfather, and I was only 23. I'm 72 now. So I said, Miggy, Grandpa, I said, I didn't know any different or who or what was going on. I didn't know. I was just an Italian hippie running wild. So I said, Grandpa, there's some old guy here, and the cops are opening up the door for him. So I said, Gramps, and he had said, what's his name? And I had told him, I said, his name's Russell Bufalino. And he goes, Russell Bufalino? He goes, well, next time you see him, I want you to walk up to him like a gentleman and introduce yourself and tell him who you are and where you're from. I said, excuse me, Mr. Bufalino. I'm Dominic Redidari's grandson from Rochester, New York, and he told me to tell you who I was. And he goes, oh, yeah. So I became friends with him. I got close to him. Not too many people was able to, besides some of the older guys that were always around him. I would eat at the table with him when I wasn't playing handball or running around like a maniac.
Look, Daddy, what do you want, kid? Get inside. But,
Didn't he get his own food in there? Didn't he get his own food in there too?
Yeah. Well, what he did is that the kosher kitchen gets to order outside food for certain foods. They don't have to stand in line and eat pork and beans and hot dogs on a Thursday night dinner. You know what I mean? And they had soda machines. At the time, you could fill up your own soda, your own glass. You get the tray. You go in line and you say, all right, give me some extra beans. Give me a piece of pork chop. But the kosher kitchen was off to the right. And they had their own kitchen. It had to be kosher. So they would order food. So what they used to do is they would order food that Russ would like. So if he wanted lasagna, they'd be in the back making lasagna. So when they and he'd sit at the table, he'd be sitting there with the table was like set. It was his table. And it was supposed to be the kosher. Nobody else sat at that table except the Jewish people. But when whatever time frame it was, Russ would sit there with his guys and they would bring the food out and put it in front of him. Would bring out the food and put it in front of him. So the kosher kitchen would cook food for Russ. So he had his private stock of food coming every day, which, it's like, this guy's, they're making food for him. I don't know, boy, he's got a connection, but the guards are all looking at him. Everybody knows that, probably just want to keep peace with the guy. Nobody wants to make waves, So
let me ask you a question, Rich.
I would get to sit there a couple times and eat with him.
It's just an observation from a mentally challenged police officer. But
no,
when your grandfather came over here, he obviously knew what he was doing and had a boatload of money.
My mother went to a private school. Yeah.
You said he's paying off police officers as bars and judge stuff to stay open. Then he knows who Russell is. So there might have been a little connection. I'm not saying he was in that life, but a connection between older Italian.
Yeah, he did business with those guys.
It was smart. And he would I told him, these old guys were funny. He used to yell at me, why do you got to dress like a bum? Why don't you cut your hair, dress nice, and be respectful when you go out? I go, I don't want to be respectful. I like this. This is what I do. I go to concerts. I get high. I listen to Jimi Hendrix. That's when all those bands were first coming out. After the bubble gum with the Beatles and shit, Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all that shit was cool. And that's hit a tab of acid, go out on a Friday and come home Tuesday. It was just a different way of thinking. So I had mentioned to him, I said, Miggy, by chance, he was the only family member that would let me call because you had to call collect. So they had a phone booth. Remember them old wooden phone booths? Well, that's what they had set up in the units. So I'd get in the unit and I'd call. And I'd say, Miggy, Gramps, there's some old guy here. The cops are opening up the doors for him. What's his name? I said, Russell Bufalino. And that's when he said to me, he goes, be respectful, be polite, walk up to him, introduce yourself, tell him who you are and where you're from. And just be a gentleman. And I said, all right. So I went up to him. I said, excuse me, Mr. Bufalino. I said, my name's Richard Veltre. My grandfather's Dominic Reddaria from Rochester, New York. He goes, hey, yeah, how is your grandfather? I want to talk to him. So what I did is I arranged a phone call to him on the telephone. So they talked to each other, closed the door. They talked to each other for a couple minutes. He pops out and he goes, "You're with me, kid. You eat with me."
It must felt good though, going right to prison and having him with you.
Well,
you know?
I would have rather ate with my friends. I felt like I had a job. I had to go sit at this table and be nice. Yeah. I want to be a fun guy. I want to sit over here with my friends. And now I got to behave while I sit there. I got to be like studious. I don't want to say the wrong thing. You know how these old guys are.
Quiet, nice.
Very quiet. Very quiet.
Very cordial. Very cordial.
Really low. Yeah. Very respectful.
You don't have to be loud. People know.
He was not.
Yeah. You can't be loud at all.
You would never think that the guy was like the way he was outside himself, because he was very quiet and very, I didn't listen to any of his conversations he ever had with some of the inmates. And he worked in the laundry department, and he had me put a piece of wood up in front of the latch, behind the latch. I'm sorry, because they were sticking their fingers through and lifting the latch and throwing the latch. So he wanted to put a block in front of it so they couldn't stick their fingers and open up the door. I worked in the carpenter shop. So that was like, hey, do me a favor. Come here. I want to show you something. So, that was his office. His table was there, and he had all the new clothes piled in there. It was like, that's where, he wouldn't put the new clothes out until he had to. He was in charge of it. So he wanted to make sure he did it right, and he didn't want people stealing. And how you got to sit there all day long and watch people steal your clothes? So he came up with this idea, and I made a square piece of plywood. I put it behind it, and I bolted it with a washer through the diamond plate mesh that they had on the door. And so they couldn't stick your finger in and lift the bolt and slide it.
Did you get released before Mr. Bufalino?
I did, yeah. Okay. I was on my way out. He came in.
When he got out, did he ever, since you spent so much time with him or whatever, and he knew you were a solid dude, did he try to contact you at all?
I didn't. I reached out to him once while I was out to thank him for helping me when I came out, because there was no federal halfway. Huh?
Now tell him how Russell helped you.
Yeah, all right. Well, there was no federal halfway house in Rochester. There was one in Syracuse. It was the Salvation Army. And he had said, when you're going to Syracuse, I got friends there. And he gave me this guy's name and the restaurant where he was at, and he told me to stop and talk to him. Then he also mentioned some lady, and her name I had a piece of paper. Her name was on it, and I called her when I got out too. And I guess they had an association of some sort. So she would invite me to her house to eat a homemade dinner. The other guy had worked. On Russell's behalf, they bought me a '65 Chevy Biscayne, 4-door. I remember it was brown with tan interior. I mean, it was a beater, but I was able to drive from Syracuse to Rochester and go home. And I remember that I wrote him a letter thanking him while he was still in jail. I wrote him a letter and I addressed it to him, and it got intercepted by the feds. And one day I was going into Syracuse Mall, and these two guys grabbed me, and they go, they pushed me up against whatever. They put handcuffs on me, and then they put me in the back seat of a it looked like a Fed car, and they just started driving. And I had said, "Excuse me, where are we going? What, are you worried?" And it was like, "You got any ID?" Because I've been getting to get paranoid. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I did something I wasn't supposed to do somewhere, not just anywhere. And he goes, "What are you worried?" And he goes, "We're marshals." we're taking you to Montgomery County Jail. I said, for what? Correspondence with a federal inmate. Bond when you're in a halfway house or parole with any inmate that's still incarcerated. It's a violation of the terms. So, but I didn't think, I thought I was just writing the guy a letter to thank him. That's all I was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that they were shaking his mail down every time he got a letter. And there I was. So they figured, thank you for helping me get on my feet.
Well,
they read it, intercepted me.
Yeah.
It disrupted me. They put me in the remainder of my halfway house time, which was 3 months. They kept me in Montgomery County Jail, and they released me from there. And then I went back to Rochester. So, but
he
yeah,
never
I
really
didn't contact
you to
I never contacted him again after that. I just, I did that one thing to thank him for what he helped me, but I wasn't, I wasn't going to be his, I'm 20, like 25. The guy's like in his late 70s. I didn't have anything in common with the guy. You know what I'm saying?
It's a baby fruit bat that I bought from online from the Philippines.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I gotta show that on my Aussie channel. He bit the head off one accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know
you rock, Rita.
I have all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, I love them. We got the gargoyle stuff here, the stained glass. This is beautiful here.
What the book of spells? You want to see that?
Victoria, what do you call it? Victorian home?
It is a Victorian.
Look at this, folks.
And yeah, we won't even tell you about the scary things that happen because that's another story.
Yeah, spirits.
Yeah.
Shit upstairs in the air. You can't hit him.
Wow, man. So if you hit someone over the head with as hard as you can with that, there's no breaking that bat anywhere.
No.
Not over the head. I mean, off the wall.
Over with a truck. It just bends.
I mean, off the wall.
Steel rod in it.
And that's called
Brooklyn Crush. These are made for hitting people. Unbreakable baseball bats. See?
They're made.
Cold steel. You know where the steel is?
Yeah.
In the center.
So they're made for actually hitting.
They're made
people.
for beating.
Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful.
And they're fucking nice. This is Willie's Remedy, THC infused. This is from Willie Nelson collection. It says high dose social tonic. You only need a shot glass of this shit.
And it's over?
We haven't opened it. This is a novelty thing. I send it to my friends that I know get high.
Yeah.
I sent them one of these for
yeah, because you don't even get high. You don't eat. I say yeah. But that's
I stopped fucking years ago.
He's eating right now. He used to go out with Amber Heard, and he won though the case. But he looks like Johnny Depp ever since the hat's on. But what a collection! And this is just one room. Like forget about it. Like this house, old Victorian. It's the way I roll, man. And with the stained glass, beautiful. And he did 20 years in prison, and he's a success. So never give up. Thanks, Rich.
The sauce is just hot. Holy shit. I'm going to be on Mind Over Madness and a podcast coming up. And I'd like to thank the Bufalino family for having me come up here and speak. It's been an honor. Eric's been great, and I appreciate it. And watch my podcast. It's coming up soon. And I'll tell you some really crazy shit.
He doesn't glorify it or nothing. Or nothing, but he did 20 plus years. People think they don't have a chance though if they're a felon.
No, well, they don't make it any easy, but if you're able to sit behind there and wait for the door open, you're able to make it out here. It's harder inside, and if you can make it inside, It's a piece of cake. Remember? He was shot. 11 years for $175. Hit somebody with a monkey wrench. What a moron. Remember? Fucking moron.